Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want you folks to know that I won't be as eloquent as my friends, but dadgummit, I won't be as long either. So y'all will be able to get out of here if you're waiting for a break. And if you need to get up and go, you go. You're not hurting my feelings one bit. Mr. Speaker, I am absolutely disgusted the way our government spends money and where it puts its priorities. We've spent over $114 billion on Ukraine. But don't get me wrong, Putin is a thug, and I wish the Lord would take him out. But Russia's GDP is somewhere between that of France and Canada. We've given Afghan refugees over $2,200 a month, and we only sent the Maui residents one single $700 payment when they lost everything. Illegal aliens cost the Texas taxpayers, have cost them somewhere around $850 million. And folks, we're over $33 trillion in debt. Fitch, which is a rating agency, recently downgraded the United States credit rating because of the general government deficit, which it anticipates will be 6.3% of gross domestic product in 2023, when it was only 3.7% in 2022. That's a huge jump for 1 year, and folks, that is doubled, almost doubled. Another reason they gave was leadership, and that's been over the last 20 years, so that cuts both ways. That's both parties. The United States spends approximately $300 billion each month. That's nearly $7 million each minute. It only takes our government 2 hours and 22 minutes to spend $1 billion, if you can imagine that. We're on the verge of a government shutdown, which none of my colleagues want. Contrary to popular belief, we're not sitting, some of us conservative folks aren't sitting in a room hoping for this, because we don't want our constituents to suffer any undue pain because of our lack of work. However, this out-of-control spending, it needs to change. And many of my Republican colleagues and I we're going to fight for that change to happen today, not in 30 days or 3 months or right before Christmas, because that's pretty much been the plan. We pass a continuing resolution for 30 days, and then they say, well, we need another one for 30 days. And then guess what? We're backed up to the Christmas holiday. And then they say, well, we need to pass an omnibus. And basically an omnibus is just a continuation, a large continued resolution. And in my opinion, it's chock full of goodies for powerful members of this body. It's also chock full of goodies for lobbyists and their special interests that we continue to grease. There's several solutions we could bring to the table. My colleague Jody Arrington from Texas chairs the Budget Committee, Mr. Speaker. I was on that committee, and I actually asked to be taken off of it, because if you know anything about our history in the last 30 years, we have not passed a dadgum budget. We haven't even attempted to, because we don't want to. The people in power, both parties, if we pass a budget, there'd be a lot more accountability, and you all would know what was going into it, and you'd probably get disgusted and send a few of us home. But my friend Jody Arrington, he chairs that committee now, and excuse me, Mr. Speaker, he has a plan that would balance our budget in the next 10 years. If we just went back to pre-COVID spending levels, Mr. Speaker, we could balance this budget. Now, I dare say there's probably very few Americans that could tell me something that's been added to their plate since COVID from the federal government that they could not do without. Yet we continue on this spending spree. As I've stated many times, with these continued resolutions, and they tell us to pass a continued resolution so we won't have to pass another continued resolution. Well, that line of thinking is like telling a crackhead that I'm going to give you more crack to get you off of crack. The truth is, we're just addicted to money, and now we're addicted to our great-grandchildren's money. We need to make some serious cuts to our bloated government in areas we don't need it. We have way too many bureaucrats. Yesterday, I brought several amendments to the floor, literally due to the Holman Rule, which allows us to line out certain people, individual people's pay. They were caught doing something illegal in the past administration. They were fired. Yet this administration seemed like they should bring them back. And they brought the people back that helped them get back. And that is your federal government. Now, my daddy fought in the Second World War in the Marine Corps in the 1st Marine Division, all the way across the Pacific. My mama's brothers all went to the war. My dad's brother went to the war. And my mama actually flew an airplane during the war because her oldest brother, Roy, had gotten killed. And I tell you all that to tell you this. Our Pentagon is a bloated disaster. I prefer to call them the war pimps because that's exactly what they are. Every year, we pass a bigger and more bloated budget for the Pentagon. This year, I believe it was $30 billion more than the year prior to the last budget. I believe that's correct. More than even President Joe Biden had asked us to put in. Yet, when folks like myself question it, people question our patriotism. I'm not offended by much up here, Mr. Speaker, but that really does, that is the cherry on top. We should stop focusing on so much on passing a bill that will be totally fine in the Senate. As we said during the debt ceiling debate, we should put our stake down. Yet now we don't want to put our stake down. We want to send a bill over there at one time that would just cut the rate of growth, which is Washington speak for not cutting anything. We're not Senate Democrats. We can't pass a budget that looks like theirs. But the art of compromise should be in there. When I was in the state legislature in Tennessee, we passed I was the House sponsor of a bill to raise the speed limit. Now, I asked for 85, knowing that I would get 70. And oddly enough, my Senate colleague was Steve Cohen, who is now my colleague here in the United States Congress. And we compromised, but we knew what we needed. I actually, truth be known, Mr. Speaker, I'd brought Peyton Manning to the floor of the House the week before. I probably could have gotten 100 miles an hour and maybe even gotten communism, I'm not sure, or it might have been anointed as king at that point because Peyton was and still is that popular. But that was a different time. But we've got to make some serious changes now, or we're going to lose our dadgum country. I always remember my daddy, who's a World War II veteran. We were at our house in West Knoxville, 8220 Bennington Drive. I no longer live there. We were in the living room, and in the dining room. I remember one of the few times it was cleaned out. We always cleaned it out for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but most of the time it was for storage. But we were in there, and we had this little color TV that was over there, and we were watching the election results come in that night, and they were not going very well. And I remember my daddy said the blessing. It was just me and him, and we had a Mr. Gaddy's pizza, or as I like to say, we were having a traditional Italian meal. But don't send me any letters. I realize that's not very traditional. But anyway, Daddy said the prayer, and he said the blessing, and all he said was, Lord, please do not let us lose our country. And I guess that's what drives me now, because I'm afraid we're going to lose our country. And this continued down this road of reckless spending is going to be the quickest way to get us there. We need to stop spending the American people's hard-earned money like we're a kid in the candy store. One of those areas that we could be doing some cuts, in my opinion, I think we should close down our Department of Education. Now, I have a degree in education. My mama was a school teacher for her whole life. My sister has a degree in education. My daddy was a dean at the University of Tennessee. I didn't mean unfund education, but if we would just send that money to the states and stop Washington, D.C. from taking its cut off the top, I think we could go a long ways. There is not one bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. in the Department of Education that ever taught a little kid how to read at Sarah Moore Green Elementary School in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I dare say there never will be. But they're going to be taking their cut off the top, just like the mob does, and that needs to stop. allow the states the responsibility that they deserve to be responsible stewards of our money and send it to them and let them decide. What works in Washington, D.C. sure as heck doesn't work in Claiborne County in East Tennessee. We've got to stop spending the American people's hard-earned money like we're a kid in a candy store with a credit card with no limit, because that limit is coming due. We do not need a continued resolution. We don't need to play any more games. We just need clean bills with real cuts to get our country back on track. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your time, and I appreciate the folks in the audience's indulgence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the remainder of my time.